Welcome to Lotus Lane Daily. I'm glad you're here. Today's wisdom is for anyone going through something hard. You know that feeling when someone asks, "How many siblings do you have?" And you pause. Not because you can't count, but because the honest answer is complicated. Do you say three? Or do you say two and quietly omit the one you haven't spoken to in 4 years? The one whose name still shows up on your mother's lips, in old photos, in every family gathering that is either carefully planned to avoid overlap or quietly ruined because of the absence. Estrangement from a sibling is one of the most disorienting losses there is. It is not death, so people don't quite know how to console you. It is not a clean breakup, so there is no social script for it. The person is alive, is out there somewhere, maybe thriving for all you know, and yet the relationship is gone. Or it is so damaged that what remains barely qualifies as a relationship at all. And somehow this is supposed to just fit into normal life. You are supposed to go to work, celebrate holidays, answer Christmas cards, and carry this enormous thing without anyone acknowledging it is there. What actually happened, and why it doesn't have a simple answer. Most sibling estrangements don't start with a single dramatic event. Some do. There is a betrayal, an inheritance dispute, a wedding fight that blew up the whole family. But more often, it is a long accumulation of smaller things. Patterns that were set in childhood and never examined, years of feeling dismissed or overshadowed or blamed, one too many moments of being let down. And then one day, someone says the thing that can't be unsaid or doesn't show up when it mattered most, and the elastic finally snaps. What makes it particularly hard is that sibling relationships carry the full weight of childhood with them. Your sibling knew you before you had words for yourself. They were there for the defining moments, the good ones and the ugly ones. They know what happened in that house, in that family, in ways no one else ever will. When that relationship ends, you don't just lose a person. You lose a witness. You lose the only other person on earth who shares your particular origin story. And then there is the grief that nobody prepared you for. The grief over the sibling you thought you had, or the one you hoped you'd eventually become close to, or the relationship you always wanted and never quite got. Sometimes the estrangement is less about what happened and more about the slow recognition that the closeness you were waiting for was never coming. That's its own particular kind of loss. The guilt and the anger and why both can be true. Here is what most people in estrangements know but rarely say out loud. The guilt and the anger live side by side, and they are both real. The anger is usually easier to access at first. What they did, what they said, the way they treated you, or someone you love, or themselves. The anger is information. It is your nervous system telling you that something was genuinely wrong, that you had a right to feel hurt, that the estrangement didn't come from nowhere. But the guilt follows. Did you try hard enough? Should you have been more patient, more forgiving? Was there a moment where you could have handled it differently? And underneath the guilt sometimes is a more complicated question. Did you do things that contributed to this too? Most estrangements are not entirely one-sided, and sitting with that question is deeply uncomfortable. An old collection of letters I came across years ago had a line that stayed with me. As long as we continue to demonize others, peace will remain a dream. Peace begins the moment we recognize the humanity in every person. That does not mean what your sibling did was acceptable. It doesn't mean you have to reconcile or forgive on their timeline or pretend the damage wasn't real. It just means that the story you tell yourself about what happened, the story where one person is entirely the villain and one is entirely the innocent, is probably not the full truth. And being honest about that, quietly and privately, can take some of the weight off. What to do when you don't know if you want to reconcile. Reconciliation gets held up as the obvious goal, the correct ending to this kind of story. But it is not always right. Some relationships are genuinely harmful. Patterns of manipulation, abuse, or cruelty that would resume the moment contact was restored. Some estrangements are the healthiest outcome available for everyone involved. Choosing distance is sometimes not failure. It is self-preservation. But if you are genuinely uncertain, if you neither want to close the door permanently nor know how to open it again, here are some things that might actually help. Write the letter you won't send, not to plan what you'll eventually say, but to get out what is actually in you. The anger, the grief, the things you needed from them that you never got, the moments you're ashamed of yourself. Writing it for no one's eyes but yours changes what you carry. Separate the question of reconciliation from the question of your own healing. You can stop waiting for an apology that may never come and still work through what happened. You can grieve the relationship without making peace contingent on them changing first. Your healing is not on their schedule. Be careful who you talk to about this. Family members often have their own stakes in the outcome and are not neutral sounding boards. A therapist or someone entirely outside the family system can help you think through what you actually want rather than what you feel obligated to want. If contact feels possible, start smaller than you think you need to. Not a grand reconciliation conversation. A text, a brief message, one thing at a time, with room to see how the other person responds before you give more. Living with the uncertainty. There is a version of this where the estrangement ends. You find your way back to each other, slowly, imperfectly, with lower expectations and more realistic understanding of who you both are. That happens. It is genuinely possible. And there is a version where it doesn't, where the distance becomes the permanent shape of things, where you learn to build a life that doesn't have this person actively in it, and you make meaning from what remains. The other relationships, the things you learned from the loss, the parts of yourself that grew stronger because of it. A modern writer once put it plainly, there are no deadlocks in life. There are only people who have given up. As long as you refuse to give up, you can always find a way forward. A way forward does not always mean forward toward the same person. Sometimes it means forward into a life that is whole without them, not because they didn't matter, but because you do too. The grief about your sibling is real, and it deserves space. You don't have to be over it. You don't have to have decided what the right outcome is. You just have to keep moving, even slightly, in whatever direction feels true. That is enough for now. That's the wisdom for today. If something here landed for you, share it with one person who might need to hear it too. Take it slow. I'll see you tomorrow on Lotus Lane Daily.